Now, Prince Andrew has officially been financially cut off from the King. An updated biography of King Charles reveals that the Duke of York's £1 million a year allowance and seven-figure private security detail have been slashed. The author, Robert Hardman, revealed that the King acted decisively despite Andrew's attempts to call his bluff in what has been an ongoing row. I'm joined now by former butler to King Charles III when he was the Prince of Wales. It's Grant Harrold. Grant, thank you very much. Is this a bit harsh on Andrew to cut him off, or is it a long time coming, do you think?
It is obviously a bit harsh, but it is, as you said, it's a long time coming because technically he's no longer kind of carrying any duties on behalf of the King. And one of the reasons for the allowance is obviously a sort of wage, salary, if you like. And as he's no longer actually carrying out raw duties, it doesn't really make sense for him to be given this wage. But I mean, we've got to remember he's not going to be kind of poor from this because obviously he inherited money from his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. So he's probably in quite a good situation. But I'm sure the allowance, of course, would have helped because he's still got Frogmore Cottage, which has also been quite a big discussion recently because there's been obviously, it's been said that the King wants him out of that cottage and obviously he wants to remain there. It was a home that he's been in for many years. Queen Elizabeth was happy for him to be there. And for whatever reasons, the King downsized and changed things around, obviously wanted him out, but he wants to stay there. So maybe this is the way forward, is to cut off the allowance, but he can keep Frogmore.
Is he going?
Oh, sorry, I lost you, Patrick.
Is he going to be able to survive without this £1 million a year allowance, do you think? Or is he going to have to get a job in Asda?
Do you know what? Yeah, Asda. I can see him in Asda. No, I think he'll be fine. I somehow don't think he's going to have to worry too much about that. As I mentioned, he's obviously had his own career. He's got his own finances. As I've mentioned, he inherited money from his late mother and his grandmother. So this allowance, it's just something on top of that. So I don't think he's, well, I don't know. I don't think he's going to miss it. I think he'll be okay without it.
Right, and is this in some way kind of a point-scoring thing? I mean, is King Charles picking his battles wisely here?
You know, it's interesting because when I was there, Patrick, the family were always close. I think we've said this before. There wasn't these kind of battles now that seem to kind of be going on within the royal family. That it was nothing like that when I was there. And it's quite strange to see how times have changed. Obviously, with everything that's happened to Prince Andrew, the royal family have got to be slightly careful because even though obviously nothing's actually been proven as of yet, they've got to be careful because it's the royal family and they can't afford for any kind of mistakes. The late Queen fully supported her son, obviously, as any mother, I think we've said this before, as any mother would. But obviously with the King, it's slightly different where he's aware that the world, the public, are watching what's going on. They're not obviously happy with what we've been hearing. And he's obviously been cautious. He's been sensible and he's been cautious because at the end of the day, as the late Queen would say, monarchy, she put before family. And in a kind of way, the King is all about family, but he's also aware that monarchy's somehow got to survive. And if that means cutting off his brother, then he'll cut off his brother.
No, indeed. And I suppose, look, at this particular moment in time where everyone's cutting their cloth a little bit, especially in light of the budget, then, you know, saving £1 million a year by not just giving that to Andrew is something. I'm not sure Fergie's going to be too happy, though. She was pictured for the first time today. She was looking a bit glum.
I think she's been overseas, hasn't she? I think I kind of follow her on some of the social media channels. And well, do you know what? The thing that's extraordinary, and it's nice, actually, I will say in support of the Duchess, is she has always stood by him. You know, it's interesting because I remember, obviously, a few years ago, everybody kind of assumed they'd gone their separate ways. And I was always aware and under the impression that they got on as friends. And she's always supported him. And I kind of think, I do have a lot of respect for her because I suppose whether, as we say, whether it be right or wrong, you know, that's obviously time will tell. But she always kind of stood by him. And I'm sure, you know, the fact that this money will have an impact on him without any question. Because if you've already had that for most of your working life and suddenly it's taken away from you, he is of course going to notice it. Even £1 million is going to notice. So I'm sure that he'll have to think of other ways of bringing that revenue in.
OK, Grant, look, thank you very much. Thank you, as ever, for your time this evening. Grant Harrold there, former Royal Butler to the now King Charles. Now, I've got all of the papers for tomorrow here now, so let's kick off with the eye, shall we? Tories inch ahead in poll after Labour hit by budget backlash. This is quite interesting, because it's Rishi Sunak's last day as the Tory leader today, and he goes out ahead of Labour, which, given that he's also just lost a landslide, is weird. But anyway, there we go. The Daily Express, winter fuel pensioners now facing drastic cutbacks. Rachel Reeves was hit by fresh criticism after a shock poll results revealed that pensioners stripped of winter fuel cash plan, they're going to have drastic cutbacks to food and hot water, apparently. The Times, tax blow for care homes. This is what's going to happen now over the coming days, isn't it? Where every little bit of this budget, where they're going to find different areas where this hits. National insurance rise is an existential threat to care homes, apparently. Fears over elderly patients as GP practices are also here. The Daily Mail goes with Charles cuts off Andrew's financial lifeline. So this is a Royal World exclusive. Unfortunately for the Daily Mail, we obviously could see that they'd put this online a while ago, and we did it anyway in the last section. So there we go. The King severs his brother's £1 million a year allowance amid a row over Royal Lodge. The Independent, where's the aid? My town has turned into a cemetery. There we are. Spanish flood disaster they're going after there. And just the final one for you is the Daily Telegraph. Musk, PM is wrong on farm tax raid. The tech billionaire weighs in on inheritance changes as MPs face anger from constituents. Let's just kick off with the eye, I think. It's just quite interesting, really. So the Tories are now ahead of Labour in the polls, which is remarkable considering they were 20-odd points behind however many weeks ago it was. It's Rishi Sunak's last day in the job, really. I mean, is this particularly bad for Starmer? I suppose the incoming new Tory leader does inherit a party that is technically up in the polls.
Doing quite well. They are doing quite well. What's also really interesting, I think, is Rishi Sunak's response to the budget on Wednesday. He was on fire, and I was very, very critical about Rishi Sunak throughout the last few years. I think he was quite an abysmal politician, quite a terrible Prime Minister, presided over the highest tax burdens in the Second World War. But you're absolutely right, Patrick. This is so interesting. Going into the Tory leadership race, we're going to find out who is going to be the next Tory leader tomorrow morning. We'll see if it's going to be the Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick. But you're right, they're going to inherit quite a supportive, quite a positive Conservative Party.
Yeah, well, 4 in 10 voters say they are worse off after the Chancellor increased taxes, apparently. 29% are now supporting the Tories as opposed to 28% backing Labour. I suppose, look, it bodes well for either Badenoch or Jenrick, doesn't it, Alice?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think Rishi Sunak might be kicking himself for not waiting to call that election. I think there's maybe some mistakes made there. But also, the fact that the Tories are now ahead of Labour in the polls without really having a leader, because Rishi Sunak, let's face it, he's not been exactly very active, says a lot. It just depends whether the next leader can maintain that momentum and really push down into Starmer now, because I think Starmer's in a very precarious situation within his own party. If I were the Labour Party, I'd be thinking, I don't know if I want this bloke going to the next general election.
Do you reckon? Do you think it's got that bad already this quickly?
Well, look, polls go up and down. The poll yesterday still showed Labour ahead and the Tories with no change at all. Labour, in fact, in the poll yesterday after the budget, showed 1 up. So we've got to take the average of the averages. But let's not forget, it was the shallowest and the most weakest landslide in history.
That's absolutely right.
And there was no enthusiasm for a kind of corporatist-style Labour Party. And what, in fact, there was is a revulsion against the kind of mess that the Conservatives had got themselves in, and the public didn't think that the Conservatives were able to sort it out themselves and felt they needed to be got rid of. Now,
Corbyn got more votes than Starmer did this election.
Exactly. So it's no surprise that they're kind of levelling out. We will see. What I think is interesting, and I'm sure that the chap will not like me mentioning him, but I was in Strangers after the budget on Wednesday, and there was one particular member of the cabinet that was on manoeuvres. He came in, he bought a drink, and he said to his aide, let's do the rounds. And he went to speak to one Labour MP after another Labour MP, chatty and chatty and pally. You only, and I was told that was the
You only
third
do that
night.
if you want to be
was
leader.
the third night in a row that particular Shadow Secretary of Health had done that.
Not Shadow Secretary of Health.
Shadow
He's Secretary of Health now.
Secretary of Health had done that, and you only do that if you're on manoeuvres. Now, it might not be manoeuvres to be leader, but you only do it if you're on manoeuvres.
So Wes Streeting wants to replace Keir Starmer.
Who would have thought
I
that?
mean,
He's only got a majority of a few hundred now, hasn't he? So
It doesn't matter, as you know,
tricky,
Patrick.
wouldn't it?
Boris famously had that massive landslide as well, but no one cared. Nobody cared. If the knives are out and you're looking like your poll numbers are crunching, and let's not forget, he's now the most unpopular Prime Minister, I think, ever after 4 months of being, well, we exclude 1 or 2 here or there, but after 4 months in history.
well, there was no honeymoon period, right? I mean, effectively, the government have come in. They've had 14 years, the first ever Labour budget in 14 years, and what we have seen is an increase of taxes of £40 billion. They've lied to the British people. They've said they're not going to hurt working people, and they have.
I do think that people will forgive and actually will accept tax increases overall. It was very clear in the election campaign that there would be some tax increases.
No, that's not true.
No,
It was very
wasn't.
clear. If there's a big if this, if the NHS, schools and roads and those infrastructure
But people
is
are not
sorted,
going to feel better
if
off,
in 4
and
years'
they're paying
time,
more taxes
well, I
for
don't know.
it.
If we've got to see if in 4 years' time
But
we
nothing's
still have long
changed.
waiting. Nothing's changed within
They're
4 months.
spending more money. They're effectively no, but
come
Lloyd,
on,
what's
in 4
happening
months,
is
nothing's
the government is
changed.
saying we're going to keep everything the same. We're just going to spend more money on it, and we're going to raise more money through taxation.
No, we're going
Working
to
people are
reduce
bearing
the
the brunt
waiting
of it.
list. We're going to sort the NHS out. We're going to sort social
How is
care out.
sorting the NHS out spending more taxpayer
What's
money
going to
on
be really
it?
interesting
Because
is
it
how
does cost.
This is not institutional
It's really
reform.
interesting to see how the Tories
It's
respond to the
unlistenable.
budget.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, I think it'd be really interesting to see how the next Tory leader capitalises. Now, bearing in mind, this is all fresh off the press today now, like you said, Pat, digging into it. How is Jenrick or Kemi, different styles completely, going to capitalise on this? Because you can dig the knife into this all over Christmas, particularly with the winter fuel payment problem.
Yeah, well, this is the other thing on the front of the Express, isn't it? And now it's saying that, OAPs are going to face choices between hot water and heating and food and all of this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's not a particularly great look.